Hey, Husker fans, Sam McKewon along with Evan Bland. We're here on behalf of Nebraska Spine Hospital. Thanks to those folks for being with us. We're talking about walk-ons. That's right, walk-ons in this particular class. And they're going to probably have 15, 16 by the time that we get going. And so, I thought we would talk about some of these guys because I think it's a pretty strong class of players. And there's certainly some interesting names in it. Evan's going to talk a little bit about some of the guys he's talked to. But there's definitely, I don't know what you want to call it, some legacy dudes in this class. And Evan, I thought you might want to cover some of the legacy guys because there's definitely some interesting names in that list.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, I think walk-on guys are fascinating to talk to anyway because their stories vary so widely. I mean, you have the guys who turn down scholarships elsewhere. You have the guys who maybe just have a couple walk-on opportunities. But yeah, in this case, Nebraska got a couple commits as sons of former Huskers from the 90s here just this last week. Derek Branch at my alma mater, Lincoln Southeast, committed as a pretty interesting DB receiver type. He says Nebraska likes him at corner to start off. He's the son of Troy Branch back from the early 1990s and just kind of fits the mold of what the coaches have often talked about, guys who play both ways, especially defenders that they look for who have played offense also. Branch is this guy. He was committed to Cornell University. A lot of the Ivy League teams like him, so he's obviously intelligent, has an instinct for football in addition to that. And Nebraska in his situation jumped on top when he decommitted from Cornell. He said, he puts online that at about 10:30 one night that he was done, and Nebraska was on him the next morning. So kudos to the school for coming in that situation. And actually on the same day, they got a commitment from Matt Hoskinson out of Elkhorn South.
Sam Hoskinson,
excuse me. His dad is Matt, right? Sam Hoskinson. And he's a really interesting prospect. I mean, how many guys out there do you know, Sam, who play center and middle linebacker for their high school teams? It's a really kind of an interesting combination.
It is an interesting combination. Rare.
Yeah. So he's someone, and Nebraska doesn't know yet, he said, where it wants him necessarily. He could bulk up and play on the line somewhere. He could slim down and play defender. So just somebody who loves the program, could jump in anywhere. And really that's the theme with a lot of these guys. They grew up loving the program. They're ready to come in and work. And as we've seen from Scott Frost's first two classes, some of those guys are starting to materialize, whether that was Luke Reimer, whether that was, Simon Oddie, Wyatt Lever, different guys have come on. And I think that's also inspired some of these players who are ready to come in and work and see if they can make a difference.
Yeah, I'm with you. Matthew Schuster is a running back out of Ashland Greenwood, obviously is the son of Brian Schuster. So who was a fullback at Nebraska back in the day when they had a run of fullbacks who were all the same. They were all tough. They could all lift 1 million pounds, and when they got the ball, they were faster than you thought. So Brian was in that group of players. Both of them, Akavickas, all those fullbacks in that era, Schlesinger, they were all good. So Matthew's another one of those. I wanted to add just to me at this moment, and of course they could add guys as we go on here. There's one walk-on that stands out among the rest, and that is Creighton Prep receiver / DB Alex Bullock. Alex, to me, is one of the 10 best players in the state. I think if you were to ask people in the Metro who they would put in that group, they would say the same thing. I'm doing a story on Kobe Bretz that people are probably reading this morning since this is signing day. And I asked Kobe, who was the guy in the Metro who was the best guy he faced, and that's who he said. And I think that tells you something. Game recognizes game. Bullock adjusts to the ball really well in the air. He's a good athlete, well-rounded guy, and I think he's going to play at Nebraska. I think Nebraska is very fortunate to get him. Hard to say exactly what FCS schools or maybe even low major schools didn't see, but I think he's a guy that could play by his second or third year and maybe play quite a bit. He has an ability. And I think people will like what they see. The kicker out of Ord, Kellen Meyer, is probably going to be a factor at Nebraska, especially as a kickoff specialist, and they need one. Connor Kolb does a nice job with the sky rights and things like that, but he can't consistently kick the thing through the end zone. And when for example, Nebraska's playing Rutgers this weekend, and Aaron Cruikshank is the kick returner for Rutgers. So Nebraska has a choice. They can either do sky right and Rutgers starts a drive at the 33 because they don't want to kick it to this guy, or they can take their chances. But unfortunately, I don't know that if Nebraska kicks off 6 times against Rutgers, they're going to be able to kick 6 touchbacks. You want to have that option when you need it. When you want to take a return out of the equation, you want to be able to do that. And this kid Meyer could be somebody that they could potentially do that with. Running back Aiden Young reminds me of some of the players that they have in the program right now, the Brody Belts, guys like that who I think Young fits into that really well. And one of those Westo, Elkhorn running backs who have carried the ball a lot in their career and just kind of know how to play the game. And I think Young is one of those guys. I think he's just a really good player who knows how to do the job. And I think within Nebraska's program, those players are really valuable. Guys that kind of know how to do it and figured it out. And you can use those guys in a bunch of different ways. They may not necessarily be, the potential talent of a Sevion Morrison, but you can put them on the field because they can do stuff in special teams or they can block in ways that maybe some of the more talented guys aren't ready to do yet. And then one more guy that I think is going to be interesting just because I think he could be interesting is Hastings quarterback Jarrett Sinek, who I think you talked to him, Evan, was a really good passing quarterback in high school and played for a good team, but that team was good in part because Sinek was good, and he was a big reason why they were a pretty good team. So I don't know what that means. It's tricky with this program because they seem to really want guys who can run the football almost above everything else. The way that they use their quarterbacks, whether it's Martinez or McCaffrey, they seem to want to run these guys 15 times a game. Sinek isn't that. Neither is Matt Masker, who's, the 4th-string guy on the team. But Sinek, I think, is comparable to Masker. And I think both those guys could play elsewhere. I guess they choose to walk on at Nebraska. Maybe they want to become coaches. I'm not sure. But it's interesting to kind of watch those guys sometimes because I think of what Nebraska's offense might be with a more pass-heavy quarterback versus running backs who throw. And to some degree, that's what Nebraska's kind of using their quarterbacks as, guys that can run it more as much as they throw it. So Sinek's an interesting guy to watch in that class as well. But I think it's a pretty strong class. It's a 14 as of when we're recording this, so 14 as of Tuesday. Could be up to 16, 17, 18, but by the time it's all said and done, one name to watch is Isaac Zadichka. I don't think he's making his decision right away. So that'll be one name to watch. He's a guy that Nebraska would obviously like to have, but he also has some other irons in the fire. So an interesting group of walk-ons. I don't think it's going to be a 27-man class. I think they're getting to the point in their roster where walk-ons aren't leaving, like they're developing. And so if you have walk-ons who are developing, you don't run them out to add more freshmen. So Frost kind of said it last week, we're starting to see fruit from that. And when you start to see fruit from that, you have more junior and senior walk-ons versus, only a couple. So I think as time goes on, you're going to see 10 senior walk-ons or 12 versus 4. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and a couple other I'll mention too out of the state of Iowa. Peyton Wheeler from Mount Air was a defender who came in that they like. Another kind of guy you can move around as a walk-on, and that's what you want, right? A guy who can fill in a spot, who's willing to work wherever it might be. And then Bo Schuller, I think is how you say it, out of Waukee, offensive lineman.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
Yeah. So they're adding guys, adding bodies. These are guys generally who are Husker fans who are willing to kind of be, what do you want to call it, practice fodder for a while. They're willing to take some
couple of them, yeah.
And again, maybe you develop, maybe you become that Luke Reimer type. Maybe you, after a couple of years, become the Simon Odie type or the White Lever type. And they're starting to see some fruit, like you said, from that. So you build this thing up regionally. Hope these guys stick around, and if you end up popping, all the better for you. It's a numbers game, and one Nebraska is more willing to play than a lot of programs nationally.
And I appreciate that about Nebraska. I do. I think they went real heavy on linemen in the first couple, I think. And I don't know if that's, because they have so many scholarship linemen, I'm not sure that, you're probably just getting practice players there. But I can see 4 or 5 guys on this list that are probably going to play. The kicker, Bullock for sure, Derek Branch. There's some players on this list that you're kind of like, yeah, they're going to be there in 4 or 5 years as major contributors. So Nebraska's walk-on program just keeps pumping them out and keeps getting them. Tip your cap to Kenny Wilhite and the work that he does within that group. That's all we have for this particular video about Husker walk-ons. Thanks to the folks at Nebraska Spine Hospital for their support, and thanks for listening.